Welcome back, sports fans. In the last segment, I mentioned Frank Ragnow's broken larynx. In this segment, I'm going to talk more in detail about how he sustained the injury as best I know it and things going forward for him. Sometime last week during the game, I don't know what caused it. I would assume somebody may have shoved a forearm into his throat. That would be the most likely cause, or an elbow while he was on the ground, something like that. I'm not suggesting anything intentional. Again, I'm not quite certain how he did it, but somewhere along the way, in about the third quarter, Frank Ragnow had his larynx broken. It was reported by the Free Press that he could not give the calls because of this, which would be rather obvious to me. So Matt Stafford had to do it, and then when Chase Daniel came into the game, he had to do it. However, throughout the rest of the game, though it was unknown to me at the time, and for several days after the game, Frank Ragnow not only had a broken larynx, but he managed to play the rest of the game without allowing a sack and did his assignments just fine. With that having been said, I'm surprised not only did the man play, I'm surprised it didn't kill him. And bear in mind, the one person to be killed in an NFL game was a lion by Dick Butkus back in the 70s. In case any of you were familiar with that, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who weren't, though, that's what happened. When I started thinking about this, it started bringing back to my mind visions of Mike Utley, which I remember. That was a freakish type injury, and I'm not saying or suggesting that this wasn't, but that was more of a freakish type injury, and it was a non-contact, non-human contact injury. The one I kept thinking about was Reggie Brown, because Reggie Brown, for those of you who don't know, in 1997, and I believe it was the last game of the season, the Lions were playing against the Jets, he sustained a neck injury on colliding with a teammate, much like what happened with the Jets with Frank Kumerow. I believe his name was. Or actually, I'm thinking of somebody else. Yeah, that was Tim Kumerow that played for the. Yeah, I forgot what his name was, and then he collided with a teammate of his. His neck ended up getting broken just from running into his chest, and that was the end of his career. And he was lucky it wasn't the end of his life. Reggie Brown had a similar thing where his neck got compressed, but what I didn't know at the time until after the game is he could not breathe for about 2 or 3 minutes. It may have been longer than that, and they had to rush to get life support to him and get him to the hospital just to save his life. Needless to say that Reggie Brown's career was over at that point, and as far as I know, he's living a normal life as of right now. Obviously, his playing career ended as well, but it was just really something. And it was fairly new technology at the time that they had the means to be able to administer CPR on a football field. Luckily for Reggie Brown, to say the least. So getting back to Frank Ragnow, I'm not only amazed he played the rest of the game, much less the quality of the way he played it, but that he, I don't know how he could breathe, and it's just absolutely amazing me. Now, with that having been said, Frank Ragnow is not going to play tomorrow, and probably not the rest of the season. If he ever plays again, it's going to be a small miracle. But much like what happened with Reggie Brown, Mike Utley, and even a player like Stephen Boyd, I mean, it's just. And for those of you who don't know, Stephen Boyd had his back broken, had his career end in 2001, where the Lions had an absolutely ton of injuries that year, which is part of the reason why they started out 0-12 that year. Frank Ragnow was heading towards being a Pro Bowler and might even make the Pro Bowl this year. I don't know how the voting's gone, if they've taken it yet, but just to have his career end this young is something, if it is over with. And from what I read, there was a member of the Indianapolis Colts who was a defensive player that had his larynx broken 2 or 3 years ago. But what I wasn't able to find out is whether he ever played again or not. So, whether Frank Ragnow plays again or not, I mean, people talk about how tough Matt Stafford is. To me, Frank Ragnow, hats off to you, man. That was, if that's your last game in the NFL, that was quite a performance. And at least from this sports fan's standpoint, you will sorely be missed. In the next segment, I'm going to talk about Matt Stafford's career against the Titans, as well as Ryan Tannehill's career against the Lions. Stay tuned to the Detroit Lions tomorrow on Ed's Sports Channel.